Everybody, my name is Tucker. In today's video, we're going to be talking about James Harden. If you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like rating on it. Check out my socials in the description as well. And yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So the Nets season has not begun exactly how I certainly would have hoped that it would, or just in general. It hasn't been as clean. It's a team that everybody expects to be very, very good, even without Kyrie Irving, and they've just been a little bit disjointed. And at the center of that is some of the struggles that James Harden is having. He's averaging under 20 points per game. He's shooting under 40% from the floor, and in general has just kind of looked out of rhythm. And through 3 games to this point in the season, James Harden has only shot 9 free throws. That is 3 free throw attempts per game. And obviously that's a huge part of what James Harden does. And as we've talked about in a previous video, they have adjusted how they're calling fouls and how they're trying to get away from this like foul baiting style of play. And it certainly impacted Harden, and both Steve Nash and Harden have come out and said some things recently about it. Nash said, quote, "I feel like he's unfairly become the poster boy of not calling these fouls. Some of them definitely should be fouls, but they're still so alert and aware, and he's the poster child of these new decisions." Harden also said, quote, "I'm not the type to complain about it." And then he went on to complain about it. "Sometimes I feel like coming to a game, it's already predetermined, or I already have the stigma of getting foul calls. I just ask for officials to call what they see. I can't stop playing basketball." Now, to give you an idea of how unprecedented it is for James Harden to shoot 9 free throws across 3 regular season games, I went back and I looked at every single season of game logs for Harden in Houston, and this only happened one other time. In 2018, January 18th to the 24th, Harden in 4 consecutive games shot 3 free throws, 2, 4, and then 2 again. That's 12 free throws in 4 games, on par with this 3 free throw attempt per game average. This is the part of the video where I tell you this is not me trying to make excuses for James Harden and start complaining about him not getting enough foul calls. This is not me making a video as a Nets fan. This is me talking about, hey, are we good? Like, is James Harden good? Like, is he going to be able to turn this around and figure this out? And the concerning part of this is, if you go and look at this, right, it's obviously a statistical anomaly. If something has only happened one other time for a guy that's been in the league for 10 years, obviously, if it's then happening again at the beginning of a season in which they adjusted all of the foul call stuff, and he's struggling to now get free throws in a manner that's only happened one other time in his career, it is obviously a concern. And it's not just the foul stuff. In general, the Nets have been a bit sloppy, but Harden specifically, he's averaging almost 6 turnovers a game. As I mentioned, averaging under 20 points per game, shooting less than 40% from the floor, and he's shooting the ball well from 3. He's almost 40% from 3, but everything else just is not working for him, and it's obviously a concern. And something I've really come to understand more about Harden now that I am a Nets fan is it's not just him getting to the free throw line and upping his scoring average, because pretty much every great scorer in the league, with the exception of Steph, gets to the line like 7, 8, 9, 10 times a game. And Harden at times in Houston was getting to the free throw line almost 12 times per game. But it's not just the scoring stuff that is a big deal for Harden when it comes to his free throw attempts, because if he's getting every foul call, then guys feel like they can't guard him as closely. That gives him more space for those step backs. If he is getting to the rim, he's so strong that you kind of feel like you have to try and poke the ball away if you're going to prevent him from scoring, and then he gets all those foul calls as well. There's and ones, there's stuff at the rim, there's floaters. It just gives him more space, and if he feels like he's not getting those calls, it makes it that much more difficult for him. And keep in mind, potentially the biggest point of all this is James Harden just turned 32 years old. He's coming off of a playoff series in which he had a significant hamstring injury, didn't play well at all, of course, being hurt. And I don't think anybody would necessarily accuse James Harden of being a kind of guy that really has taken fantastic care of his body throughout his NBA career. I don't want to say that this is Darren Williams, because that's some of the worst flashbacks of all time for me, where it's like, oh, we got this guy, it's going to be exciting, and then within 6 months he was awful and falling apart. I'm hoping that's not what's happening here with James Harden. It's only 3 games. It's a small sample size, but it's still worth talking about. But I do have one more point here before we kind of talk about the Nets as a whole. And that is kind of the history of the league making these like sweeping changes from a rules perspective, specifically when it comes to fouls and things like that. This is not the first time that league has stepped up and said, hey, we need to adjust how we're calling games. We don't like the product we're putting on the floor. This isn't working for us. They put in those like anti-flopping rules not long ago, where they started handing out technical fouls, and they tried to be stricter about not letting guys just flop and throw their head back and get foul calls. And that lasted 9 months. And then we ended up right back where we were at the end of last year, where there's guys jumping into people on threes and stopping in the middle of the floor and getting run over and not playing basketball. And we were supposed to have been doing something about that for years prior. So I guess my point here is like, It's a bit of an issue right now. I think it's definitely a difficult adjustment for Harden to try and figure out how he's going to be able to get fouls, because that's so central to his game, like it or not. But ultimately, one, he's probably going to adjust. He's a very good basketball player. He's had to adjust to a lot of different things throughout his career, and I'm sure that this will be one other thing that he will manage to figure out. But I don't have a ton of hope that the league and the officials are going to be super consistent about this foul call stuff, either for the rest of the year, into the postseason, or into next year. It's when they call something a point of emphasis, it's exactly what it is. They emphasize it and then they forget about it. Typically, that's what happens. So I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the year, we're seeing the free throw rate up. I think the free throw rate right now is the lowest it's ever been in the history of the league, granted through only the first couple of games. And I think a lot of that does have to do with these rule changes, like you've talked about in the previous video. But ultimately, I got to see more to know if this is really going to be a long-lasting thing. I think the basketball has been better. I'm not mad about if Harden's getting less foul calls, if Trae Young's getting less foul calls. I'm cool with that. I'm just curious that they're going to be able to keep it up. But for the Nets as a whole, they are very, very close to being an 0-3 basketball team right now. If Philly doesn't absolutely collapse the other night at the end of the game, I swear Philly, I think they still have 108 points. They were at 108 for what felt like 25 minutes. If they don't collapse at the end of that game the other night, the Nets are 0-3. Granted, they get Milwaukee on ring night, first game of the year. That's going to be a tough one on the road. They go to Philly, win that one, and then the Charlotte one was weird, but I mean, it's a young team. It's a team that's trying to make the postseason. It's a team that is talented, and they had a really, really good fourth quarter. The concerns for me are they're relying on KD a lot, who's getting older, played in the Olympics. They put a lot on him in the postseason last year as well, and I think he wants that. But that's also part of the concern as well. Is like, can we just get through the year with everybody healthy? Like, I already went through a postseason last year where they were just struggling trying to carry themselves to the next round because not everybody was healthy. That's certainly a concern. The Kyrie thing kind of does feel like it's still looming over the team a little bit. Like, everybody's just kind of waiting on the day that Kyrie's just going to stand up and announce that he's going to come back to the team, and that'll take, obviously, some of the responsibility off these guys offensively. The bigs are a bit of a concern. I keep waiting on it to click for Claxton, and maybe him and Harden just need more time to build their connection and their chemistry. Maybe that will happen. They're playing a lot of two bigs together. There's just a lot of stuff that's happening that isn't what Brooklyn does best. I feel like they're feeling it out. They're trying to figure out ways they can get through the year, and then they can break out their best lineups with KD at the 4 and whatever they want at the 5, whether it be Blake, whether it be Claxton, whether it be nobody at the 5, whether it be just KD and a whole bunch of other guys out there. They're still trying to figure it out. I like decently what I've seen from the bench. I think Patty Mills has been an awesome addition. They're still trying to figure out a way to guard. It's going to continue to be a problem for them until they get to the postseason and Kevin Durant, really steps it up defensively. In a 7-game series, I still think this is a very, very scary team. But yeah, I mean, I'll say it. The Harden stuff makes me a little bit nervous. I'm watching the games, and I don't know if it's just because I've come to expect superhero Harden over the last couple of years in Houston, where he's averaging 36 points per game, and he's just not doing that in Brooklyn. It just looks a little bit awkward, and it looks a little bit stagnant. Or maybe this has always been who James Harden has been, and he's just not getting the foul calls, and it just is a little bit more uncomfortable when you have someone like Kevin Durant out there with him, and Kevin Durant is just standing there watching him. Maybe that's always been the Harden style, and it's a little bit more awkward when you have someone as talented as Kevin Durant out there. Ultimately, I think they have solutions. They're playing a lot of guys. Like, there's a lot of Javon Carter. There's a lot of Paul Millsap. I don't think Bruce Brown has touched the floor yet this season. So ultimately, there are adjustments to make. They still have 2 of the best players in the league and a third that could come back at any moment, hopefully. And I still believe in a coach. I still believe in what they've brought together here. But I think the biggest point is just continue to pay attention to the Harden thing. See what his free throw numbers look like. See if he can find a way to be more efficient from the field without getting those foul calls, because I think that's one of the main reasons why his field goal percentage is down, is because he's taking these shots at the rim that he's used to getting foul calls on, and they're counting as misses. If you miss a shot and you get fouled, it doesn't count as a miss. If you don't get fouled, it counts as a miss, and that's one of the bigger issues for him. I like the way that he's shooting the ball from 3, but apart from that, it's a bit of a concern. Hopefully, for me personally, hopefully he makes an adjustment. I don't want the foul call stuff to go back to the way that it was. I'm cool with the way that they're calling games right now. I just hope that James Harden can figure it out. But we'll see if it lasts the entire season, this foul call stuff. But yeah, that's going to be the end of today's video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like rating on it. Consider subscribing for more videos just like it as well. Check out the boxes on screen for more videos from me as well. And yeah, check out my socials in the description. too. With all this thing said, hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.